Godzilla, one of the most iconic cinematic characters in film history, up there alongside monsters like Frankenstein and Dracula. Ever since his first appearance in the 1954 classic film, Godzilla has received universal acclaim and spawned the longest running film franchise in history, with countless films being produced throughout numerous decades. As the character in films evolved over time, Godzilla's reputation grew throughout the world, establishing the character as a cultural icon for Japan. By the 90s, however, Hollywood believed it was their time to develop their own Godzilla film, and began producing their own interpretation of the character, hoping that their film would cultivate a larger audience for the character in the West. The plan backfired horribly, with the film receiving extremely negative reviews from both critics and audiences, becoming the worst received film in the character's history. The failure of 98's Godzilla left the character in hiatus in Hollywood, thus setting the challenge for a new production company over a decade later. How could Godzilla be rebooted for international audiences whilst respecting the character's roots? Would it even work for modern audiences? The answer lies in 2014's Godzilla. Before discussing the development of 2014's Godzilla, I feel that I must first examine the failure of 98's Godzilla and the state of the franchise after that film's release, as I feel it is necessary to discuss before the reboot. As stated previously, Hollywood were keen to reinterpret the character for Western audiences. American film producer and distributor Henry Saperstein received permission from Toho to pitch a new Godzilla film to Hollywood studios, stating, quote, "For 10 years I pressured Toho to make one in America. Finally, they agreed," end quote. With TriStar Pictures officially obtaining the rights to make a Godzilla film in 1992, director Roland Emmerich and producer Dean Devlin were hired to create the film. The pair decided that their Godzilla needed to be entirely different from the traditional Japanese design of the character, stating, quote, "We took part of the original movie's basic storyline, in that the creature becomes created by radiation and it becomes a big challenge. That's all we took. We forgot everything about the original Godzilla right there," end quote. This was a risky move. Completely abandoning everything that made the character unique illustrated that Emmerich and Dean Devlin didn't understand the character at all, and this showed once Godzilla was released in 98. Though it wasn't a box office failure, reception of the film was overwhelmingly negative. Everyone disliked the film, from critics to the Godzilla fanbase to the actors, directors and producers associated with Toho's Godzilla in Japan. Criticisms varied, but the main critique of the film was the lackluster story, characters as well as the design of Godzilla. Godzilla had been turned into an animal, rather than a larger-than-life, unstoppable force of nature. While Emmerich and Devlin commissioned a treatment for a sequel, the studio abandoned these plans due to an overall lack of enthusiasm from fans and the general audiences, with Emmerich and Devlin leaving due to budget disputes. TriStar Pictures let the rights expire for a sequel in 2003, even though Sony had paid Toho $5 million for the sequel rights before the 98 release. In August 2004, Toho were concluding their Millennium series, which aimed to appeal to the Godzilla fanbase after the failure of the 98 film. With no plans to continue the series after Godzilla Final Wars, Toho agreed to a contract with Yoshimitsu Banno. Banno had previously directed 1971's Godzilla vs. Hedorah and was eager to remake the film for modern audiences. Banno announced that he had secured the rights from Toho to make a Godzilla IMAX 3D short film titled Godzilla 3D. Toho reportedly provided Banno the rights but without any financial backing, and they had the final say on the story and creature designs. Banno's plan was to specifically target the American market by hiring an American cast, while Toho acted as technical advisors over the Godzilla character in order to distribute the films in Japan. Funding, however, proved difficult to attain for the project, eventually becoming stuck in a state of production hell for a year. In 2007, Kerner Optical arrived on the project to develop the technology and produce the film. They planned on combining practical and digital effects, including motion capture, in order to bring Godzilla to the 3D screen. With the backing from Kerner, the team met with Toho in order to renegotiate their license to upscale the project into a feature-length 3D production. Funding was finally arranged in February 2008, with the movie scheduled to release early 2009. However, Kerner began to run into financial strife, threatening to cancel the whole production. The company would eventually file for bankruptcy and cease production in 2011. With the project yet again looking to fall into a state of production hell, producers Brian Rogers, Peter Anderson and their then proposed director Keith Melton met with Legendary Pictures to get their support for a 3D theatrical film in 2009. It is unknown when Legendary expressed interest in creating a Godzilla film, but the interest resulted in the Godzilla 3D project being shut down, with producers Banno and Rogers returning the rights to Godzilla back to Toho, allowing Legendary to sign a new contract which was publicly announced on March 29, 2010. Once acquiring the rights to Godzilla, Legendary began developing their plan for the franchise. One of the first decisions decided upon was that the franchise had to be rebooted while also respecting the character's Japanese roots, no iguana-like creature required. Rogers also stressed that they would follow the blueprints that Legendary had already established when reviving the Batman franchise, proving that respecting a character's origins can prove to be a universal hit with audiences. Thomas Tull, CEO of Legendary Pictures, stated that, quote, "Our plans are to produce the Godzilla that we, as fans, would want to see. We intend to do justice to those essential elements that have allowed the character to remain as culturally relevant for as long as it has," end quote. The film was officially announced at Comic-Con 2010, revealing early concept art for the new Godzilla alongside the announcement. Rogers confirmed that Legendary planned a target release date of 2012, and that the reboot would be a live-action project with a CGI Godzilla battling two other monsters rather than just the military. Rumours began to spread in October that Guillermo del Toro had been approached to direct the film, which he later denied. Del Toro would funnily enough go on to make another kaiju-centered film, Pacific Rim. That same month, David Callahan was named to write the first draft of the script after he pitched his take on Godzilla to Legendary and Warner Bros. Over the course of production, 4 other writers worked on the screenplay. In January 2011, Gareth Edwards was officially announced as the director of the film. Edwards had just come off writing and directing the pretty successful film Monsters, and stated that he knew the importance of getting the film right for the fans. Callahan stated, quote, "Godzilla is a pretty cut and dry, giant monster that smashes stuff, but the reason I got excited about it is because I saw themes and relationships to the modern world that I could tell in this story that was important," end quote. In order to modernize Godzilla and create a believable, semi-realistic universe for these monsters to inhabit, Callahan researched Godzilla's history, animal documentaries, as well as natural disasters and local government disaster planning in order to depict the events in the script to be as close as possible to real-life disasters. When Edwards came onto the project, it was announced that Callahan's first draft would be rewritten by another writer, David Goyer, who was attached to rewrite the script in July 2011. Fans were mostly excited at Goyer's attachment to the project, as he was one of the people who redefined superhero cinema with Nolan's Batman films. Goyer only worked on the script for a few weeks, however, and he did not get a screenwriter credit, stating, quote, "I mean, I did 3 or 4 weeks of work on Godzilla. It wasn't a page-one rewrite or anything like that. The term is script doctoring, is what I did on it," end quote. In November 2011, Max Borenstein was hired to continue work on the script. Borenstein had previously written 2003's Swordswallowers and has gone on to write the future MonsterVerse films. This script is the only completed script I could find online, and it's pretty interesting, so I will be comparing the script and the final film later on in the video. In October 2012, Drew Pearce came on to polish the script, making changes such as making the principal characters older in order to suit the actors that Legendary had intended to cast. Finally, in January 2013, Frank Darabont was hired for a final rewrite. Darabont described his plans for Godzilla as returning into a, quote, "terrifying force of nature," end quote. He also wanted to add a very compelling human drama, and that Godzilla would also be tied to a different contemporary issue rather than the atomic bomb testing in the original. In addition to contributing to the script, Darabont mainly focused on the emotional aspect and further development of the characters. Edwards commented on Darabont's work, stating that, quote, "We blocked out the whole story and Frank did a pass at helping the characters and emotions. He delivered on that. Frank brought a lot of heart to it and soul," end quote. Edwards additionally confirmed that one particular scene from Darabont's rewrite convinced Bryan Cranston to join the film. This scene has never been confirmed, but if I had to guess, I'd say that they're referring to Sandra Brody's sacrifice early on in the film. When discussing the themes for the film, Edwards stated that, quote, "Godzilla is definitely a representation of the wrath of nature. We've taken it very seriously, and the theme is man versus nature, and Godzilla is certainly the nature side of it," end quote. With the screenwriting complete, Legendary turned their attention to casting parts for the film. Joseph Gordon-Levitt had allegedly turned down the role of the lead in 2012, leaving Legendary with a reporter's shortlist for the lead role including Henry Cavill, Scott McNairy, and Caleb Landry Jones. Aaron Taylor Johnson was eventually cast as the lead for the film, with Bryan Cranston and Elizabeth Olsen also in talks to co-star. Cranston praised Edwards' vision, tone, and pitch for the film, going on to say in an interview that he compared Edwards' approach similar to Steven Spielberg's style in Jaws. Juliette Binoche and David Strathairn then signed on to join the film. At the start of principal photography in March 2013, Legendary announced the addition of Ken Watanabe to the cast. After filming had started, Richard T. Jones and Sally Hawkins were added. Principal photography began on March 18, 2013 in Vancouver under the working title of Nautilus. In an interview, Aaron Taylor Johnson described the filming as mostly on location, with very little use of green screens. CGI was then used to add elements later. Filming primarily took place in Vancouver, with production for the film wrapping in the last week of March 2014, with Godzilla finally releasing theatrically on the 15th of May 2014. If there's one aspect of 2014's Godzilla that is universally praised, it would be the incredible visuals and audio work. film still looks gorgeous 7 years later, which is a testament to the amount of work put into the cinematography and creature design. Seamus McGarvey served as the film's cinematographer. Although the film was made to be released in 3D, McGarvey himself decided to shoot the film instead for only in 2D, as he disliked working with 3D filming equipment and the experience of watching 3D films in theatres. No complaints from me there. What also helps to sell the believability of the CGI is that the creatures are rarely seen during the day. The majority of the scenes with the creatures take place at night, with the low light really helping to hide any blemishes or inconsistencies with the CGI, as well as adding to the tone of the overall film. My only critique is that sometimes the film is too visually dark, making it hard to see the grey and black monsters. The design group strive to get Godzilla's design just right, with Edwards asserting that Godzilla had to look perfect no matter which angle they filmed him from. For inspiration, they reviewed all previous incarnations of the characters, and the team studied various animals such as bears, Komodo dragons, lizards, lions and wolves, thereby allowing the visual effects artists to visualize Godzilla's body right down to his bone, fat and muscle structure, as well as the thickness and texture of his scales. Even Godzilla's face incorporated elements of the faces of bears, dogs and eagles. All of this work and attention to detail really pays off in the final film. Godzilla looks incredibly expressive and is quite possibly the best looking interpretation of the character we've seen put into film. Edwards and the design crew faced a completely different challenge when designing the Mutos, however. While the design of Godzilla was incredibly restrictive, the requirement from producer Thomas Tull was that Godzilla had to fight something new, so the designers were suddenly left completely unrestricted when creating these new creatures. With over a year to design the Mutos, the designs kept mutating according to Edwards into the final creation that appears in the film, which is where my biggest criticism of the visual effects come from. The Mutos look too sleek and smooth and therefore less animalistic compared to Godzilla. Additionally, throughout the film they're constantly compared to parasites, but yet their designs don't really convey that in my opinion. Concept art that's been released shows other versions of the creatures that look far more off-putting and creepy and parasitic, which I wish the designers went for. Nevertheless, the creatures are sufficiently intimidating, which is conveyed through McGarvey's cinematography. The aim for the cinematography, according to Edwards and McGarvey, was to combine elements of documentary-style filmmaking alongside Spielberg's style of filmmaking. McGarvey shot the film digitally, using Arri Alexa cameras with Panavision C-series anamorphic lenses. Edwards specifically strived for a sense of realism with the shots, stating that, quote, "We wouldn't place a camera anywhere it would be impossible to get one," end quote. This really helps with the immense sense of scale that is present throughout the film. By placing the camera in realistic settings and by also placing the humans in the shots to add to the sense of scale, the film is able to really present these creatures as awe-inspiring. Seriously, there isn't a single shot in these creatures' sequences or battles that doesn't capture its incredible scope. This leads us to the film's sound design, which, in my opinion, is up there as one of the best. It absolutely set the standard for creature sound design and has not been surpassed before or since. Similar to how the visual design team were completely unrestricted with their designs, Eric Adal and his team were completely unlimited in deciding what the Mutos would sound like, with the only exception being that they didn't want the Mutos to sound anything remotely similar to Godzilla sonically. The result is a unique, chilling sound that prioritizes stuttery vocals and creepy chatter between the two creatures. It is perfect and gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. But then of course, you can't have a Godzilla film without his iconic roar. The Godzilla roar was completely revamped for the film. Using the iconic roar from the original as a base, Adal and his team spent approximately 6 months slowly improving and developing the roar, getting it just right. And it was time well spent, as Godzilla's roar is nothing short of epic. Overall, on a technical level, besides a few personal critiques, the film was near perfect. But the question remained, how would Edwards reboot the story of the iconic character?
Your mom's out there, Ford. To me, she'll always be there.
Joe Brody is a man who has lost nearly everything. In one fateful morning, he lost his career, but more importantly, the love of his life, after inadvertently putting her in danger in the first place. Desperate to prove the cover-up of the Janjira incident, his obsession causes him to distance himself from his son, blinded by his work to realize what he's doing. He's a man in pain, and after convincing his son to head into the quarantine zone to prove his theories and more importantly to find closure, the seed of hope is planted. Maybe these characters will be able to heal through their trauma together, finally reconnecting as father and son. But that's not where this story is going, and if you've seen this film before, you know what happens next. After being imprisoned by Monarch, they prove Brody's theories to be correct, and the Muto finally emerges from his cocoon, causing mass destruction and panic across the planet. And in this destruction, Joe Brody plummets from a destroyed railing, and later dies from his injury. No dramatic payoff, no heroic sacrifice, he just falls off a railing. This, to me and many others who watch this film, just doesn't work and left a sour taste in the mouth. The audience has at this point become attached to Brody, who was played brilliantly by Bryan Cranston. Having just come off one of his greatest ever performances in Walter White, Cranston really nails Brody's desperation, sadness and anger. What does not help this is that Brody is not mentioned again once throughout the remainder of the film. resulting in the second and third act that almost feels completely separate from the first. It's a shame because with one more rewrite to incorporate Joe Brody into the rest of the film, the human element of the film could have been up there as one of the best in the franchise. It's one of the things I actually prefer in the 2012 script by David Callahan with revisions by Goyer and Borenstein, with Brody surviving the Muto attack and making it all the way back to San Francisco, where Elle looks after him while trying to avoid the destruction in the final act, bringing closure within the family from their experiences. Additionally in the script, Swordswallowers and Ford have a brief conversation about Joe Brody just before the Halo jump, which I also wish was kept in, reinforcing Ford's drive. By having Brody killed off in the conclusion of the opening act, the emotional element of the human story becomes destroyed, leaving the rest of the characters to pick up the pieces. For the remainder of the film, the audience follows three other characters, Ford and Elle Brody and Dr. Ishiro Sawazara. Out of the three, Sawazara is the only character with anything interesting or poignant to say.
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control, and not the other way around. Let them fight.
With Ford becoming the audience's eyes as he moves from set piece to set piece, while Elle's scenes highlight the sheer destructive power of Godzilla and the Mutos in San Francisco. Sawazara serves to reinforce the themes of the film, constantly criticizing the military for their arrogance, as they believe that their technological advances would directly lead to a control over nature. Throughout the film, Sawazara argues that nature inevitably will restore the balance, returning Godzilla to his roots as a terrifying force of nature. This reinforces just how insignificant we truly are in the eyes of these creatures. There is additionally a speech from Sawazara in the script taken out of the final film which I wish was kept in, as he describes the horror of the Hiroshima nuclear bombing to Admiral William Stenz when showing his grandfather's watch, reinforcing the dangers of nuclear power for humanity whilst also putting the military's plan into perspective. I would like to briefly talk about the set pieces in the film as they are one of the reasons audiences go to watch monster films in the first place. They're incredible, with each set piece building on from the previous until the conclusion, with my personal favourite being the Halo jump. Visually, it's stunning as the soldiers leap off the aircraft, falling down through the dark and stormy clouds into symbolic hell as Edward has described. I mean, just look at these shots. Visually perfect. This leads us to the titular character, Godzilla. Fans have been divided over Godzilla in this film, specifically over the length of his appearance. Godzilla only appears for just under 10 minutes of the film's runtime, causing many fans to be frustrated by the lack of their favourite monster.
I deserve answers!
What's the point of having a Godzilla film if you won't show Godzilla? In my opinion, this film's greatest strength is due to the lack of Godzilla. Let me explain. Edward's ability as a director is to sustain audience engagement while also building up the expectations into the final act of his films. Another example of this is from Edward's work in his next film, Rogue One, with the final act being an incredible action sequence that ends in one of the greatest bits of fan service in film history. Ring any bells? Yes, while it may have been frustrating to have this epic build up to Godzilla's reveal halfway through the film, especially when the build up in this scene has been so fantastic, only to then cut away, Edwards is managing audience engagement, ensuring that they will be ready to burst with excitement when the monster fight actually begins in the third act, giving Godzilla fans goosebumps as he smashes and battles his way through San Francisco in full CGI glory. For me, similar to other monster films such as Jaws and even the original Godzilla all the way back in 1954, I will always prefer 8 to 10 minutes of incredible high quality action than 20 to 30 minutes of pretty good action. Overall, while Joe Brody's death is disappointing, sacrificing an important element of the film's message without any satisfying payoff in the first act, the story still works. This is mainly due to the film's fantastic pacing, with a conscious decision by Edwards to never go to the same location twice, giving the film a fantastic speed as we move from location to location. And, with the epic spectacle of Godzilla fighting the Mutos with some incredible set pieces, the film definitely satisfies. When acquiring the rights to one of the most iconic characters in cinematic history, Legendary had an important decision to make. How can this character that had previously been tarnished by the West be rebooted for modern audiences? The result is a film that takes a beloved character and elevates it from a simple schlocky monster film into a haunting reminder of humanity's relationship with nature, reflecting modern, real-world tragedies while presenting the audience with some incredible visuals and audio work. As the film ends and Godzilla returns to the sea triumphant in victory, the film reminds the audience of the powerful tie between nature and humanity, leaving with a sense of haunting optimism that nature has rightfully been restored to its natural state. Hi everyone, and thank you for watching my very first YouTube video. I did plan for this to come out a few days before Godzilla vs. Kong, which is now a few weeks ago that came out, but yeah, you know, life gets in the way, and this video became a lot bigger and a lot more time consuming than I thought it would. But yeah, I'm very glad that it's finished, and I'm very glad that I can put it out to everyone to watch. As I said, I have put a lot of work into this video, so I would very much appreciate a like. It would mean a lot. Also, don't forget to subscribe, because I'm planning to do a lot more videos of this nature on this channel. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Again, thank you for watching. Stay safe, everyone.